Hey everybody, this is Kathleen Moss, and you're listening to A Breast Cancer Diary. Today's guest is Nanette Labastida. She's in Austin, Texas, and she and I have been ambassadors together for Stand Tall AFC over the years. She is a realtor by trade, and her passion is yoga, which we'll talk about at the end of the interview. But I want to start out by asking Nanette about her background, diagnosis, and current treatment plans. Welcome, Nanette.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here and chat with you. My history, my background diagnosis, I was originally diagnosed in 2010. I was 42 with breast cancer. And it was, back then I didn't really pay that much attention to the words, but I do know that it was ER/PR positive and HER2 negative. And I had chemo, like 4 rounds of chemo, no radiation. And I had a mastectomy with implants, with expanders and then implants. And I did tamoxifen for 4 years. And then in 2019, I explanted to flat. And so that's when I joined that community. It wasn't necessarily through any breast implant illness situations. It was more like discomfort and never feeling like myself and knowing that at some point they'd need to be changed out and I'd rather not. And I had the ability to do it timing wise and insurance wise. Zero regrets. And then in 2022, I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. So it was a recurrence with mets to a few spots in my bones, rib, pelvis, and a couple on my spine, I think. A collarbone lymph node here, which is really the thing that got me into the oncologist, thank goodness, and pleural effusion around my lungs. Mm. And then I started treatment at that time. I was actually qualified for a clinical trial. My doctors did some research immediately, and just based on like all the factors of my previous treatment and the type of cancer, all the stuff, I entered this trial called the Serena. I might not remember the exact name of the trial, but the trial was a blind trial in which I was taking a CDK4 inhibitor, Ibrance, and then I was taking 2 other pills. One was anastrozole, and the other pill was a new drug called a SERD, SERD, or a placebo. So I would take both of them, not knowing if I was getting which med I was getting. So I was getting treatment, I just didn't know which one.
Okay. And it turned out in the end, now you just recently found out that you were on the blind arm of the trial, which means you were only taking a CDK4/6 inhibitor?
No, turns out I was not taking the SERD, the new trial drug.
Oh,
but I
SERD
was
taking
the blinded.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was taking anastrozole. So I was on what's called standard of care, which is what I would have been on if I wasn't on the trial.
Right. Okay.
Like the standard is like almost everybody, or a lot of people, they just do the CDK4 inhibitor and an AI. And that's what I ended up being on for 3 years, almost 3 years.
Okay.
So I didn't get to the trial drug, which is, I've heard that it might be out later this year. There is a SERD on the market. It's just not an oral SERD. It's I think you had someone recently talking about fulvestrant and how they've been on it for a long time, and that's a SERD, but it's a shot. So it's kind of slightly less quality of life, and they all work a little differently anyway. So.
And just for the sake of listeners who don't know what a SERD is, I personally got it mixed up with SERM, which is very similar.
Okay.
So there's selective estrogen receptor modulator.
Okay.
Or a SERD is the newer drug, which is a selective estrogen receptor disruptor, I believe.
Degrader.
Degrader. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's actually degrading the receptor site so that the receptor can't receive estrogen, right?
Yeah.
Is that the mechanism?
That's what I think that's the mechanism. And so it's similar to an aromatase inhibitor, but just works from a different angle is what I understand,
Well, it's similar to tamoxifen. I think tamoxifen is a SERM where it's a modulator. So it'll block the receptor. So a SERM sits in the receptor and blocks it from receiving any other estrogens, where a degrader, I think, destroys the actual receptor.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting stuff. I love talking
about it. It is
the
interesting.
science.
And I'm learning more and more, especially because I'm sort of such in the depths of it. And I also, last year, attended the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium as a patient advocate. And I'm so glad I did in advance of this progression, because am so aware now of
Oh,
these
yeah.
terms, and I can bring them up to my doctor. I thought it was like too much information, but there's definitely some that like settled, and I'll go every year now. So,
Yeah, me too. I'm hooked. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so tell us about what happened. So you had Mets in
22.
22. Okay,
Hmm.
that's when you started the trial right away when you started
Hmm.
with your diagnosis of Mets. So that's 3 years ago. And then
Hmm.
just this year in 2025, you had another incident or, change in your diagnosis. So tell us
Yeah.
what that was like and how you understand that now.
Yeah. Yeah, this was so for people that don't totally know some of the terms, progression is when you've had metastatic cancer or you have it and it's been stable or even no evidence of cancer activity from your treatment. And then some scan or some result of something shows that is active again and maybe grown in that area or there's a new area.
So
Um,
you had a scan that showed it.
Yeah, I had a CT scan which I was having every 3 months, and
Oh,
it
wow.
showed an area in my left pelvis that looked larger, but it's where I had Mets originally, so they were sort of like hesitant to say, or they couldn't tell. Like the CT scan doesn't necessarily show that. It just showed that they were like maybe it's just bone degeneration from having been affected.
Mm-hmm.
And I had had some like hip pain, and I was doing the sort of typical cancer survivor sort of thing of like, is this bad? Is it just because I'm working out? Is it because I'm 57? Is it, or is it like alarming? I need to bring it up. And you always want to not bring it up, even though you probably should. And I had gotten to this sort of like feeling like, it's kind of gotten constant. So, and then I got this result. And that was right before going to YSC, which we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to like go anyway. And, sort of shelf any worry. And then when I came back, I had my sort of actual doctor's appointment, and my tumor marker result like numbers were up a little bit. So to me,
Okay.
I immediately, like you sort of put puzzle pieces together. So I was pretty certain that there was progression, but I also had to have a PET scan scheduled and an MRI of the pelvis,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had to delay this appointment, but I also had an appointment with a orthopedic oncologist for X-rays and just a deeper conversation. I love seeing him. I've seen him. It's my second time, and he just gets a little nerdier, deeper into the bone structure. But he's not my primary oncologist. So yeah, so the scans showed activity in my pelvis, in the I can't remember the scientific term, but it's the back of my pelvis,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a hole there, and that's why it hurts.
Oh, wow.
um, and the rest of the bone is like an eggshell, so I'm a fracture risk. Um, and I also had to have a biopsy of that, which was it was not as bad as I thought, but like that really scared me to go in
Yeah.
and get something from my bone. It's so different than like a soft tissue.
Right. A
Um,
marrow biopsy then?
I think it was, yeah, yeah. I mean, I was, semi like Twilight sedated, so it was like, oh, you're done.
Okay.
you know, I'll
Not
take
too
that
bad.
kind of stuff all the
Yeah.
time. And that is to, I know there's a lot of tangents on this topic, but there are a lot of tangents in this world, and so it just goes this way. So the reason for the biopsy is because of mutations that exist in cancer treatments in cancer. I think are largely as a result of being on treatment, but so there's these mutations that can come onto your cancer type that completely change the course of treatment, if you have them. And so and that's one thing I truly learned like deeply at San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium
Mm-hmm.
was the need for this knowledge to figure out your next treatment and not just go, oh, you have progression, we'll just try another version of the same drugs.
Which is what we
Um,
used to do.
which
Yeah.
is what we used to do because you didn't even
Yeah.
know. Um, so um, the while waiting for the results of that, because they're actually still not all the way in, my doctor did put me on the versions of the other drugs. So I started treatment. I started with another a CDK4 inhibitor, Verzenio, and then fulvestrant shots, which is the SERD that we were talking
Okay.
about from the
Yeah. The same
trial,
third.
but it's
Okay.
a different manufacturer and it's in a shot, so it's a different
Right.
version of
Delivery.
this. Yeah, different
Yeah.
delivery and different manufacturer. Um, And, he's just like, we just want to get some treatment started. And it was interesting because I had a very difficult time getting Verzenio delivered because of insurance. Um,
Oh,
and this is actually another tangent, but like my insurance is actually quite good. And when I meet my deductible, I have 100% medical coverage for the rest of the year. So
mhm.
I learned from Ibrance that I can get these drugs classified as a medical benefit, and then they'll be 100% covered
Mm.
instead of a
Good.
pharmacy benefit,
Oh, good.
a
Okay.
prescription. However, getting everybody to understand that on the same plane is really challenging for some reason. The insurance actually was the first one to like approve it for that, but the pharmacy needed lots of information, and my doctor's office was like still submitting it as a pharmacy because that's all they know, and so I had to keep explaining. So it took a really long time to get the Verzenio, and I was not too upset about that because the side effects are rumored to be pretty bad for some people with diarrhea. And I was just like, oh, I've got a yoga retreat, I've got all these things anyway. So it did finally come, and I took it for 2.5 days and I started the fulvestrant shots because some of the results came in from the biopsy. I don't know about mutations yet, except the one thing, and this is so fascinating and weird, in that the cancer has evolved and it is no longer hormone positive.
Okay. Yep, that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's a small expression of estrogen, no progesterone, and there's a small expression of HER2 now.
Okay.
Um, and this is where I am right now. I'm still in limbo because there's a drug called NR2, which maybe you've talked about in the past with
Mm-hmm.
people. That's I technically could qualify for that because of that small
Her
HER2,
too low.
her
Yeah.
low. However, there's another marker on this biopsy of all the many things that I've never heard of before. I think I have it written down. Um, that we're still waiting to get in. It's called PDL1. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what it means, but if it's over 10%, then I can be treated as triple negative. And so then that would dictate going on taking Keytruda.
Yeah.
So I don't, like I'm still waiting. So I
Okay.
immediately stopped Fulvestrant and Verzenio.
Okay.
So now I'm not on any treatment, which again, I'm weirdly peaceful about, or maybe not weirdly,
Good.
just,
As
it
long
just
as you're
feels,
peaceful, that's the main
yeah,
thing.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not, it doesn't give me anxiety. I'm just sort of, we could talk about this in depth if you want, but it just helps me double down on my emotional and spiritual, um, work and peace, and like refocus on nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
and just sort of overall health, because you weirdly, even with stage 4 cancer, when you're having like good results, you can get really complacent in a lot of things.
Right.
You would think it would be a constant reminder, but you just want to, the body, I think human nature is just built, wired to like just get back to your old normal, and it's easy to push huge drama aside if you're feeling kind of normal. So
And probably if you have good mentors that teach you that it's not the end of the world, like have you had good mentors in the metastatic community to tell you that
yes, I
life goes
have.
on?
Well, I've got,
Okay.
yeah, and actually my biggest mentor is the book Radical Remission. I'll have, like I
Hmm.
I I listen to it, I re-listen to it a lot, like that just reminds me that there's all sorts of different situations in the world, and there's different ways to handle it, and there's an option for everybody to handle. I feel like healing my life in ways is more important than thinking about healing cancer,
Yeah.
so
Good.
that I can exist from a day-to-day basis in a beautiful way.
Mm. Well, I want to talk about yoga, but before we go into that, I wanted to hear a little bit about the CT scans because that was shocking to me when you said you get them every 3 months. That's a lot of radioactivity every 3 months. Do you get full body CT scans or is it more
It's
isolated?
it's two. It's neck. Um, it's like neck area, and then like from here to hips, where
And is
any
that
cancer was.
just since your progression or has that been since 2022?
It's been since 2022, and I don't know. Here's
Wow.
another thing. I actually don't know. It's a good question to ask. I don't know if that protocol was trial protocol or regular?
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense that it would be the trial because they'd want to see. Although, oh, maybe because it's blinded. Like if you're not taking the drug, the trial drug, then why do they need to look? But because it's blinded,
Yeah.
you and the doctor are probably both blinded to the fact that
Yeah. Yeah. He
you
didn't know
weren't
what I was
on the
on.
drug.
Yeah.
So it's double blind. So then you would get the CT scans as if you were on the drug.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
had to do, and every 3 months was, a blood, like my blood work was like the trial kit, so it was like vials and vials and vials of blood that they sent off. So yeah, every three
Okay.
months was their monitoring of
Okay.
that. So
So that's like the negative side effect of being in such a good quality trial.
yeah.
Double blinded is the best kind of trial to do, but then you get maybe over scanned or over treated
Yeah,
in
and
some
that does
ways.
worry me, but then I'm also like, well, then how we wouldn't have found the progression that's, like
Right.
there's pros and cons to being overscanned in a way, like because it's terrifying to think
Right.
of like what if it was been 6 months and I was just thinking I had hip pain and I didn't go to the doctor because that was the kind of person I was or something,
Yeah, you
and
found it right away because you were having those
yeah,
scans. That's
yeah.
true. Wow. Well, that's mind blowing.
It is mind blowing. It's like it's that is why working on your like mental health or your state of existing is really the most important, because if I let all of these confusing things derail me, then I would be frozen in everything and I would be upset about the scans, or I would be upset about not having the scans, or and I'd be confused, and I am still confused, but I you know work on letting the confusion just exist, and then I just keep going and I work on trust, spiritual trust with
Hmm.
universe, or my higher power. And that's like that was hard to get back after the progression
I bet.
because it's kind of like a fu, but it was just you have to do whatever it takes in your own way, to get
Yeah.
back.
So, other than the book that you mentioned, what else has been guiding you, or who else has been guiding you through in that sense, in terms of your mental game over these last few years?
um I just I'm yoga is definitely a big part of that. The texts of yoga and the philosophies of yoga, really with these things. And, so I have a strong meditation practice. I follow a lot of spiritual teachers. Like I really, really love Gabby Bernstein. She's like, you know, always really like gotten me through a lot of stuff. Listening to speakers, and I went to like a Hay House conference, and that was really um, like one of the best experiences I ever had. Just seeing all these teachers that I had followed in real life talking, and really lifting me up. That was good. And then things like for example, at that conference, it was in Phoenix, and I just took myself to the botanical gardens one day, and I'm like, oh, this is something I love. Like I was just like walking around, like, in wonder of beauty and nature. And I don't, I live in a city. We have nature here, but like I don't partake that much. And so like, just discovering different things that are healing. And one of my prayers, I guess, every day, or ever since Met's diagnosis, is just being like open to receiving different forms of healing and knowing the discernment of whether they're for me or not. And that could mean walking in nature, or it could mean some weird herb. Like I'm not angry when people suggest weird stuff to me. Like maybe I used to be, or like many people are, because it's
Mm-hmm.
just something going out into the world that was meant to be said to me, and I'll figure out whether it's like, thank you, and in my mind like I'll never touch that weird
Mm-hmm.
thing, or
Mm-hmm.
for some reason that sounds interesting, maybe I'll look into it. So I just, yeah, openness, receiving, and discernment are the sort of filter of healing for me.
I love that. I love your description of that. It's it's not too woo woo. It's you're just talking about intuitive
Yeah,
wisdom.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when you know something, and it's because, the cancer world is an odd place to swirl in, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you're into spiritual stuff, because you're going to come across all the different things, um, alternative things. And so I don't want to be closed off to anything. I just want to do what feels right. We have some really top-notch oncologists, and And I think mine is amazing. And he's, like knows of all the trials, and he's just a kind person, and I love him.
Do they have an integrative oncology department? Like, do they?
No, they don't.
No.
No.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and it's even getting worse. Like they just stopped their physical therapy program.
Oh no.
So yeah, so that is a big lack. And so that stuff has to be sought out yourself and paid for, and we have a place here called Cancer Rehab and Integrative Medicine, and they have acupuncture and physical therapy and exercise and various other things, but it's they don't take insurance, so you have to figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how does your oncologist feel about you taking herbs and other things? It seems like it would be kind of way more intense in that setting, in the metastatic setting, for you to bring up those options to your
Yeah. Well, when I
oncologist.
was on the trial, I really couldn't do anything.
Okay.
Um, I'll look up something. I know, like on a CDK4 inhibitor, I know that St. John's wort isn't good,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
grapefruit, so like finding that out myself. I had a herbal coffee sort of elixir powder that included
Hmm.
St. John's wort, so I was like, oh, I can't take that anymore. So I'm again discernment and a little bit of research to just trust what's right myself.
I feel like, too, in the metastatic setting, you almost have a little bit more authority over your life.
Hmm.
You're in that stage where you're like, hey, my days are numbered, and I'm going to claim the power
Yeah.
over my life. Like, I've seen a lot of patients act that way in the
Yeah,
metastatic
that's how I
setting too.
feel. It's like, and that actually is one of the factors in radical remission is, and other people call it a different thing, like being the CEO of your care and being empowered, um, and so that either could mean standing up to your doctor and saying things, or using that discernment and intuition and some self education and knowledge and figuring out what's best. You know,
Hmm.
it's just, but you have to kind of forge your own path, I think, when you have metastatic.
Definitely. Yeah. And some of the principles that you're talking about, mind body principles, are really, they go across the lines of cancer patients and your average everyday stressed out
Yes.
American. Like, they're
Yes.
not something that's unique to
No.
us as
No.
cancer patients. So, but you did, in contrast to that, you did choose to start a program just for cancer patients. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Yes. Yoga. I teach yoga for cancer patients, and I'm also certified as a coach. I haven't been pursuing that angle as much because it just it's. I also am a realtor. Everything's busy, but also I just need to point out I haven't said this yet, but because of this progression, I can't actually practice yoga right now, and
Oh,
that is like so that
wow.
is I'm having a lot of grief about that.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, I have faith that it'll come back, but that's been really hard to not. And
Okay.
the movement of so many yoga poses, which would be lunges and bending at the hip, are the exact movements that compromise the back of the pelvis.
Okay.
So there's just, yeah, there's just like almost. I can go to the gym and lift weights, you know.
Okay.
So I'm moving and I'm like, like I'm working through that. But if I went to a class, I would be doing like probably an eighth of it or a 16th of it. Um, so that's been hard, but I can still teach my yoga for
Okay.
cancer. So I have a 200-hour yoga training that I did in 2013 with the idea of doing this, but I never followed through of really. I taught a few classes, but it was difficult. So when I had the metastatic diagnosis, I renewed that passion and vision, and I took a training that I'd always wanted to take called Y4C, Yoga for Cancer, the number four, and it's founded by this woman named Tari Prinster, and she wrote a book and she developed this training, and it is very science backed and oncology based, and and then also community based because it's well, not every teacher actually is a cancer survivor, but many are, and so for me that's one of the biggest aspects is creating a community in the room with me, as part of the community. So I did that training online, and yeah, so now I'm teaching regularly once a month in Austin, a free class that I'm able to do thanks to a studio that donates it once a month, and a nonprofit called Moving Beyond Cancer Collaborative, who offer exercise and wellness to cancer survivors. And so it means I get paid, which is lovely, and
Hmm.
I get to offer it for free. So that's one of the ways where I do it. And then I'm also starting to teach and open to teaching at retreats and conferences like a Young Survival Coalition that I did in April or March. So, and that I think is probably my biggest joy right now, is being like invited or going to do things in big groups and sharing that. I was, dubious or didn't know really what a yoga training would be like online, but it's very well done. It's a great
Mm-hmm.
platform. I loved it. It's very well thought out. It's, the poses are all with various side effects and any compromises in mind. And it's also not gentle yoga. Like it's not restorative yoga or like you have cancer, you should just relax. It's vinyasa yoga, it's movement. It just uses a lot of props to make the movement more accessible.
Okay.
Especially if you're in a class where you had a lot of people you really didn't know everyone's different things. It's nice when you do know, and then you can kind of change stuff. So there's a lot of like, I almost always have like a side effect that I'll address specifically in a class. So we can talk about lymphedema and lymph health, and we can talk about bone health and or stress. And there's just like it's just, but everything kind of works on everything. But sometimes there'll be a class that's more focused on a particular side effect. And then there's some poses that we just don't even do, like most forward folds, because in case someone's had like deep flap, and they've got, or it doesn't have to be breast cancer. They could have another kind of cancer. They had a surgery down, on their abdomen and be compromised there. So many factors. But yeah, it's very conscious of all of the side effects and things that could, so you can actually do it when you're in treatment or right out of surgery.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to a separate training to do that more
Yes.
accommodated
Yeah.
version. Okay. And how many of your yoga practitioners that are in your classes are breast cancer survivors, would you say? Or do you even know? You probably don't even ask what their
Actually,
cancer is.
all of them, but two. Yeah, I know most of the people that come because I've been in the breast cancer world for so long here in Austin, so I'm pretty active in the communities. Yeah, I think there's one woman that's a ovarian, two that are ovarian cancer survivors, but everyone else is breast cancer. But I'd be
Okay.
open to others, but that's just how it is. I guess there's the most
Yeah.
people that see my posts about it. It's definitely hard
Okay.
to get the word out. We try, but to like I have a room upstairs that needs to be cleared out so I can make a beautiful space and teach online. I really that is in my
Yeah.
heart because then I could reach anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that would be amazing. So yeah, that's one of my goals.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that until just
Mhm.
now. Had you been to YSC before you went there as a yoga teacher?
I had been to one of the wellness conferences when it was here in Austin, um, actually right when I had the metastatic diagnosis, I think. And maybe one before that. I can't remember.
And YSC for the listeners is your Young Survival Coalition. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, that's
Okay.
right. And it
So
is
it's
for
for
women
folks.
diagnosed before under the age of 40,
Oh, is it just
essentially.
women?
No, it's not. There was a man at the
Is it? Okay.
conference. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry. So those, so
No,
I
I,
should,
I wasn't sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, so I went to the wellness one, and it was really, really lovely. And um, I have a lot of friends there, and I, I have a friend that does the sound healing at almost all of their conferences, and she lives here. And so she encouraged me to apply, and it was so yes, I was scheduled to teach two yoga classes, but I also got to speak about yoga to the metastatic tract. And I don't know if that's new or not, but they had like a whole, like in the the choosing of your workshops or breakouts during the day, there was a track for metastatic. And that's just, I think that's just so important because we are all the same. We've all had the same day of being diagnosed with breast cancer. But then there's just this other level and level of understanding that looks like it makes me real emotional just to think that we're all just walking around with this diagnosis that's so heavy. And so there is some conversations that really can only deeply be had with each other and really understood. And then there's also, we don't have to be as guarded because I'll be honest, sometimes I know that it's scary to think about me as you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to be guarded and I try not to be because I think it's important to speak about everything. but it's in my mind sometimes a filtering, and so you can just be completely unguarded about that when you're all metastatic, and some of these women are so young. And so having that be also the sort of demographic of young people with metastatic being able to hang out together,
Yeah.
um, in the different, and then having some of the older ones in there too, just because then it's years of living with it, and and so there's a
Hmm.
lot of hope and inspiration, and it was special. So I hope I get to go again and do it for all their things. And teaching the yoga it was probably my biggest class, so that was fun too. Um, and it was very affirming for my goals. Like you always feel insecure when you're doing something new-ish, and then to get such a great feedback from people, and so I felt good about myself afterwards. It was just lovely. So yeah.
What would you share with someone that is just slightly curious and being kind of led or called to a position like yours with doing yoga that's accommodating for cancer patients? What would
To
be the
to
first
teach it
step?
or to take it.
Yeah, to teach it.
Yeah, I mean, I would look up Y for C. There's some free videos online, and you can see how they use props for their classes, and so see if that's something you'd want to do. And I actually don't know if you need to be certified with 200 before getting that. I mean, there's no actual like barrier to teaching yoga. Like the 200 hours is not a legal thing necessarily. There is an organization that monitors that, but like, I mean, honestly, original yoga teachers are just people that did yoga and then shared it. If it's important to the studio, you might want to work in, then maybe. But I think you can take Y4C. It's a 75-hour
Okay.
certification. I think you can take it without the 200. I'm not entirely sure. That's something to look into. But I would encourage anyone to look into it, because it should be everywhere. It would be lovely if it was offered everywhere in every town and easily offered, you know, at every studio. It's really hard to get a class established.
Hmm.
Just because it's hard to get the word out. I don't know why it is.
Well,
People do them
cancer
in
has been
medical.
kind of
Oh, go ahead.
secretive. I feel like, the cancer diagnosis up
Yeah,
until our time, up until
yeah,
this generation, we've been really secretive about, especially breast cancer. I think just shame and privacy being
yeah,
the norm.
yeah.
So,
And it's true, because if you go to a class that's called that, you're probably going to talk about it,
hmm.
and so maybe some people feel reserved too, and that's kind of one of the things I also want to change. I want to talk about it, like and that's another thing in Y4C training, is we say cancer all the time,
Hmm.
like, we'll say like, yeah, cancer sucks, and so like, I'm so glad we're here to like, do something for ourselves. And so we don't just sort of come in and like ignore cancer and just do yoga. It's like, it's the conversation, it's open, and I really like that. And yeah, maybe people feel shy, but on the other hand, it's would be so empowering, because I understand feeling shy going into a regular yoga class and going up to the teacher and saying, I did this because there was no yoga for cancer, and saying, look, I just finished cancer treatment, so I'm going to be doing this in the back of the room, or if I can't do this. And so I was really outspoken about myself, but that's not the norm. You know,
Hmm.
Many people would feel a lot of shame and embarrassment to like make a spectacle. It's not really a spectacle, but make something of themselves to go up and stand out like that, so that they can have an accommodation in a regular class. So, um, but if they can come to a yoga for cancer class and they don't have that, and then maybe they'll learn some tricks and confidence and can just go into a regular class and take care of themselves within that regular class, which is what I had to teach myself to do.
Mm. Yeah, I can relate to that as someone that goes to Pilates who has
Hmm.
lots of neck and arthritis kind of
Hmm.
problems. I have to do half of the things differently when I show up and like and just
Yeah,
disobey
just
the commands
disobey.
of the
Yeah.
teacher. Yeah.
And that takes some balls. It's like, no,
Mhm.
it's like, and there's some yoga classes that feel like that you have to do that, and or people think that, so to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable to advocate for themselves, or to learn how to then advocate for themselves in another type of class, I think is really great and important. Yeah.
Yeah. So you spoke a little bit about some of the benefits, mind body benefits, but what would you say is like the crystallized, both personal and maybe clinical benefit from your perspective of what you do in the yoga class?
Yeah, so there's I'm going to not remember numbers, but there is a recommendation from the, I think, American Cancer Society about amount of minutes of exercise that is helpful for preventing um, recurrence or cancer, that cancer survivors should do. And so a vinyasa, a movement yoga class counts towards that. So
Mm-hmm.
getting your movement in is one of the just main benefits of being there.
Yep.
And so physically just moving, building strength and building bone density because many of the poses are weight bearing. And so you're building bone density, which is a huge concern for many breast cancer survivors. And helping your lymphatic system with movement because the lymph system doesn't pump itself. And so movement is the only way to get it going. And yoga is incredible for that. Um, and then, emotionally, it is, the breathing and the body awareness. There's a meditation before, and just the words that a teacher can use, or that I use definitely, with bringing in some sort of, I don't know, philosophies or thought processes of like self-love and self-compassion and uh, being steady through this chaos of cancer and all this stuff. All those things can bring you calm and lower, and they actually lower your nervous system, and
Mm-hmm.
stimulate the vagus nerve, which is the calming, and lower your cortisol and all that stuff. And so that can help with sleep, which then goes back to physical. There's just it's all intertwined.
Yeah.
There's just like there's unless you have like a big hole in your pelvis like me, there's no non-benefits for it.
Mm.
And even I could figure out something, like maybe I need to spend some time on my mat and like make up a series of things that I can do that's comfortable right now. I just haven't tried that yet. So
How did you find your first couple of, I don't know I called them practitioners before, but that's not probably the
students,
students. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. How did you find them? Did you advertise or put a
um,
Facebook group up or?
Yeah, I have a Facebook group and then I have my Instagram like glitter every day. And the Moving Beyond Cancer Collaborative, I'm friends with all those people because I've been like going to some of their classes and having acupuncture with them and so they promote it too and they put them in the
Okay.
newsletters. But it's been mostly just sort of like personal outreach. Um, and I try to brainstorm. I had flyers up at Texas Oncology at my office for a while, and people did. No one came from it, but people would say, "I saw your picture." So like I haven't done that. I need to. That would be a great thing is to put more flyers up. I find more places to put flyers up. I mean, that's somewhere where I probably could use a little bit of more brainstorming and more effort. Is
Hmm.
finding the people. I just am like I said, I'm so well connected in the survivorship world here with support groups. We also have a group called the Breast Cancer Resource Center of Austin. And, I have shared in our Facebook groups there. And they might have me actually, we have a 1 day metastatic retreat every year. And I'm hoping that I'll teach yoga at that this coming year. Um, and yeah, just word of mouth spreading around my people.
That's so great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see little sprouts of healing open and start and grow all
Mm-hmm.
over our country, just to be turned on to these little movements
Mm-hmm.
that mean so much to each individual patient that's a part of them. So thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome. Yeah, I want to spread it. I've even thought about asking if I could teach something at San Antonio. Do you go to San Antonio
I
every year?
do. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
most of the patient advocates are survivors. So, like, I was thinking about, I don't know who to reach out to, but reaching out and seeing if there was
Yeah.
space for one of those big rooms to teach one morning
Mhm.
for all of y'all. So,
Yeah, the advocate lounge might be too crowded, but they might be able to get another room. I mean, the rooms are
yeah,
empty
there's
half the
so many
time.
rooms. Such a
Yeah.
huge convention center.
That's
Um,
such a great idea. And
yeah,
we need that. We need to be together even more than we already are when we're having lunch and networking. Because
yeah.
not all of us really love to be verbally networking all the time, especially
Mm-hmm.
like, introverts, you're there to learn. And so you're saving all of your
Mm-hmm.
energy, your physical energy, just to soak up all of the knowledge. And so for me, it's like I have to limit my networking time or I'll just like fall flat on the floor of
Yeah.
exhaustion.
Or if you're one of the people that has a booth, your
Mm-hmm.
your energy
Which
is
I
going out
am.
so much.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I have to limit that too.
I mean,
But yeah,
meet.
yoga would be restorative.
Yeah, yeah. I'll find an email of someone and see what I can do. 'Cause,
I'll help you do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
great.
That would be good. Thank you.
It adds a whole other element to like the integrative part, like bringing some awareness. I mean, maybe a doctor would come in and go as well. They could learn.
Right? Oh, I'd love that. We'd see which doctors are open to
Yeah.
all things, like you just want to find those doctors
Yeah,
so
exactly.
badly
If there's a doctor
sometimes.
in here,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to him or her.
Yeah. The allies.
Hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I always ask my interviewees if they have a little bit of advice around what they would want to have known at the beginning of their journey, either for you, either at the very beginning or at the time of your recurrence with Mets. What would you like to tell your younger self now if you could?
Oh God, that's really heavy. Because I want to kind of go back to my first diagnosis, but I don't want it to be a bunch of regrets, because I
Mm,
don't know if I would have gotten metastatic if I'd done anything different. Like I can't know that.
yeah.
I do. Hmm, I think both times I would just like not like a negative warning, but just like bit more education or knowledge on the possibilities of cancer coming back or changing. Like I think it's good to be naive in some ways because otherwise you can't live in fear. But I think there's just I think the conversation around the possibility of recurrence is it could be done better
Mm,
with I don't know how yet because it is scary, but I think that
mm-hmm,
a conversation about it, about the possibilities and reality of it, not for everyone.
mm-hmm.
I'm not scaring anyone, but that it is, something that is should just be more talked about somehow.
Well, and just your being here is that bridge right there. Like just you're telling your story, I think is such a powerful movement in that direction. Like for me, I never met anyone with Mets and I became scared of Mets
Mm-hmm.
because it was such a like foreign concept
Mm-hmm.
to me. I would hear people refer to it in podcasts and
Mm-hmm.
different things. But then when meeting someone with Mets who has a life, who is not living in fear, who is confidently going forward and doing their work in the world like yourself is what we need to
Mm-hmm.
see. Okay, that's possible and that's possible.
Yeah.
Like we could get that diagnosis, which is scary, but also we can live a really powerful life with
Yeah.
it.
Because I would say I had some friends with Mets, and I'm appalled, not appalled, shocked at how much I wasn't even aware of what was going on with them,
Huh.
like
Okay.
like the terminologies and things. I was
Yeah.
just because probably I didn't want to, right? I
Right.
was like, and because I would think, oh, if that happened to me, I would just be devastated. That would just be it. I would be
Yep.
like there's just no way I could exist, like so I didn't think about it because that's how I thought about it. And like this is kind of sad, but one of my most beautiful, amazing best friends passed away in 2021. And I recently did something kind of odd in that I looked at her name on Facebook in the Mets group that I'm in now and saw all of her old posts, which I weren't privy to at the time because I wasn't in that group on Facebook.
Okay.
Um, and so I saw her use these terms that I'm so familiar with now. And I saw her talk about like a drug and then asking maybe a side effect. And I'm like, I had no idea that this was going on with her. I didn't know she had these thoughts and these questions and you know, this knowledge. And I didn't even actually know where her Mets were, for God's sakes. But I call her my best friend, you
Hmm.
know, um, because I just didn't want to know. And I just was like, I'd rather just be la di da. Are we still able to hang out? Like that's just my protector, which I think we all have. And I regret that. I would have loved to have sat and talked with her about all that stuff and learned or listened and been there more for her
Mm-hmm.
as, not, but maybe she also protected me from it because I didn't have Mets like I do with other, you know, early stage people.
Right.
Maybe she didn't want to scare me, and because she would want to say this isn't going to happen to you, Nanette, or something. So
Yeah.
it was really an interesting moment to like go back and look back at all those posts from her and see what she was going through parallel to when I knew her. And now that I'm going through those things.
Yep. Yep. It's amazing that
So
you can access that. It's a gift that you can access that.
it
Hopefully it's
really
not too
is. No, it
too
was it
negative.
was it was hard, but it was also a gift. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's been this many years that I could have even done it. Like I still don't like to look at our texts. There's
Hmm.
and that's the whole other story is like dealing with grief of losing your
Right.
friends because that happens.
Yeah.
um, so, but yeah, I think that's it. I think it's the conversation about it as a reality and to not be so afraid of it,
Hmm.
so that you can continue to live not fearing getting stage 4, but not ignoring it.
Yeah. I think we need, and we'll probably find more language around
Hmm.
these kinds of conversation. Because even young people nowadays, some of them do like to remain anonymous and private about their diagnosis details. But more and more of us in our 40s and 50s, and certainly folks who are younger, are completely unabashed and out in the open,
Yep.
wanting all the help and support they can get. And so we need to know how to ask permission to
Hmm.
be that personal with folks. And we probably haven't built those words or
I
tools or
think
language yet.
that's right. I think that is actually it. We just haven't built it yet, but it will come. And um, you know, because I just want to sort of touch back on something when I talk about like people being aware of it and not being afraid of it. And this isn't to like teach any sort of like prevention methods, like, oh, you should be aware of it so that you can live like this to not get it, because that people can do X and get it and not get it, and people can do Y and get it and not get it. So
Hmm.
that's not the reason to be aware of it as a reality, to like try and make sure you don't get it.
I
So,
agree. Yeah.
like, because that's your own personal journey. If
Yep.
you want to do the things to prevent it that you think work, do them, because that'll make you happy. As long as
Yeah.
you're not doing them within that fear, you know, like, oh, if I have one piece of chocolate, my life is ruined. There's the balance, but
Yep.
that's a really deep. But that's my whole point. So it's not for that. It's just to be able to live your life freely and to know how to handle things when and if they happen.
Yep. And with the knowledge, I'll just say this too. Like, personally, I believe that science has not found any conclusive
Mm-mm.
ways. Obviously, science hasn't, but
Mm-hmm.
um, also the alternative medicine
Mm-mm.
industry or community hasn't found any viable ways to avoid getting recurrence or
Nope.
mets. So,
Mm-mm.
so there's no way
There's
to
no way, right?
there's no way to capture any truth because the truth
Right.
hasn't been found. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no secret out there that's hiding from
Yeah,
the
really,
majority
it's
of us.
like the I can't remember. Other Mets people have said this. I don't. Pretty sure I didn't make it up, but one of the things that definitely like is important to me, or the wording I use, and it should. I would like this for everybody. Is that it's, and I might have said it earlier, but it's healing my life. Yeah, I said that
Hmm.
earlier.
You
More
did
than
say that, yeah.
healing cancer. It's like, so if you can not have to try to do that when you get a Mets
Hmm.
diagnosis, that would be great. Find your purpose, and and live these things. Like the sort of example is like, the dresses that still have tags on them. Like, what if I died before I wore them? you know, like just that's just a trivial
Yeah.
example, but
Yeah.
it's like every day is fancy, or every day is special, and it's so cliche, and it's so true.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah.
Well, thank you, Nanette. I really value you coming and telling your story while you're in the middle of this difficult mystery. My friend Danielle also did this the same. She came on right after her Mets diagnosis, and it was really, really emotional. And we didn't get too deep into the emotion, but I know the emotion is there, and I feel it
Hmm.
with you. And I admire you for swimming through it in public like this.
Thank you. Yeah, I had never envisioned that that's something that I would do, and especially in this current, yeah, like I'm still in the confusion mystery. I don't know. I don't know what my treatment will
Yeah,
be. Um,
yeah.
so, but I'm here. Yeah, I'm here to share anything. from my
Well,
heart.
thank you. And I look forward to uh, chatting with you this fall about how things go in Austin, and
Yes.
you're going to try to table at your local walks, and we'll be in touch about that,
Yeah. Oh,
which is
yeah. Yeah, for
always
sure.
fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
It's been
October, I'll see you or talk to you about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it'll be powerful.
Hmm.
Tabling has been so amazing. I just can't get over how good it is to have conversations, not just to be seen by each other at a breast cancer walk, but to talk with those who really need to talk about their
Hmm.
bodies.
And
So
they
thank
do,
you for
because
being.
at the walks they come up and talk to you,
Yes,
but it's just such a
yeah,
brief thing, like, oh, I'm flat too. I just don't, I could never walk like that. Um, so yeah, having a
yeah,
table they can actually come into and stay for a minute,
yeah.
you
Have
know.
a real conversation.
Hmm.
They have permission to have a
Hmm.
conversation, and it's been so amazing the conversations that we've
Oh,
had. And
I'm
I know that you're
excited.
going to be so great at that. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome.
Talk to you then.
Yeah, sweet. All right.